Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Societal Narcissism. This video is sponsored by contribution from Clara. Clara gave a general contribution, which I'm going to use on this video. A couple of you sent me emails about this, wanted to know if I had anything to do with it. That is basically the words coming out of my mouth. This is Christopher Rufo. I didn't see this, actually, which is surprising because I do follow him and get his direct tweets on X. I'm sure I would have come across it eventually, though. But I'm glad the people who had brought it to my attention, so I will use Clara's contribution to review it. It's called Cluster B Society. Interesting. Societal narcissism, cluster B society. Seems right up my alley, no? Let's just get right into it. It's only about 11 and a half minutes long, so it's not all that long, so let's just check it out.
You're not imagining that the world has gone mad. Healthy debate has been replaced by activist hysterics. Masculinity is condemned as regressive, while men in skirts and heels are celebrated in the public square. It's as if we're experiencing a society-wide mental breakdown. It's easy to laugh at these outbursts as the ravings of a small but vocal minority, but the compromised health of our body politic is not a trivial concern. A strange new pattern of psychological dysfunction has infiltrated our most prestigious institutions, our corporate bureaucracies, and the...
See, like, I've seen all of these women on Twitter, their TikToks. I've seen all of them been individually in the compilations. Like, these are your typical left-wing females, okay, who live on taunting. Their whole thing is to taunt you. But then when things don't go their way, you get the full-on borderline personality disordered meltdown. This is what I've been talking about. This is what leads to societal narcissism, cluster Bs running amok. These were all of these girls, all of these women, okay, are direct progenies of boomers, of the baby boomer.
Highest offices in the land. In short, we're sick. Our society is out of balance. We've been consumed by a cluster of disorder that appeals to our worst instincts and deranges our most...
And again, these are all individuals who would have been in mental hospitals, okay, before all the mental hospitals were shut down. Now they're in positions of authority. They're judges, they're lawyers, they're politicians, they're doctors, they're school teachers, they're administrators. They used to be segregated from society because they were dangerous sociopaths. They were dangerous.
Most important social functions. We need to recover our sanity, but to do so, we must first know exactly what we're dealing with. Every historical period develops unique psychological characteristics that shape public life. After World War I, we had the lost generation that was shell-shocked and disillusioned. In the mid-20th century, we entered the age of anxiety, characterized by a pervasive sense of existential dread in the face of the bomb. And 50 years ago, we saw the rise of the culture of narcissism, which social critic Christopher Lasch described as a society obsessed with ego, desire, and self-image.
All started in 1954 with the censure of Senator Joe McCarthy, which gave baby boomers the playbook to attack their own families, to attack their own parents, to give them, by using cultural Marxism and communism, as now you have McCarthyism as the red herring gaslight to push back on any of their nonsense.
Today, we are witnessing the emergence of something new, what might be called a cluster B society. Like the culture of narcissism, our own digital age has a distinct psychological profile, heavily influenced by the power of social media. The cameras are always on. An audience is always watching. And narcissism has transformed into hysteria, moral theatrics, emotional volatility, self-indulgence, and outbursts of violence.
Always was. Always was. It's just now more pervasive because with every decade, they've taken more and more and more from us. More and more and more, to the point now they're almost the majority.
Psychologists have captured the spirit of our modern culture in 4 specific psychopathologies that together comprise the cluster B personality disorders. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by a sense of entitlement, obsession with one's own self-importance, and deep feelings of resentment, often expressed through moral self-righteousness. Borderline personality disorder is characterized by an unstable sense of identity, black and white thinking, feelings of emptiness, and recurring self-harm and suicide attempts. Histrionic personality disorder.
Not real suicide attempts, okay? Well, attempts, but they're not real. They're not really trying to kill each other. That's why they're just attempts. Not actually a history of suicide. Just attempts, which means they're bullshit. They're just attention seeking. Jesus Christ, did I write this?
Is characterized by excessive emotionality, sexual provocation, and attention seeking, often to serve a pathological need for sympathy. And antisocial personality disorder is characterized by impulsivity, manipulation, disregard for others, and a penchant for violence and aggression that violates social norms. But this cluster of social pathologies is no longer an individual matter. It has begun.
And understand, the cluster B has all of these in their tool bag. Now, every cluster B is usually predominantly either NPD, BTD, HPD, antisocial, but they can draw off of any of the other three categories at any given time in any given situation, so it suits whatever purpose they might need at that point. It's a tool bag. It's a playbook. Playbook is thick, and they can pull whatever play out from whatever ideology they need to at any given time.
To shape the patterns and structures of our entire culture, which is quickly becoming a cluster B society that replaces disagreement with accusation, uses false compassion to manipulate citizens into compliance, honors victimhood instead of accomplishment, and enforces the whole scheme with the threat of violence.
I'll say this. It is, on one hand, rewarding to see this getting more popularity out there. But on the other hand, I'm a little bitter. Like, are these people biting off me? Like, I know some of the same people that follow him, follow me, that work for him, follow me. There's a couple other people out there like that. And I knew this was going to happen eventually. I did. I'm glad it's out there. But, like, at the same time, I still got to wonder on a personal level, like, what the fuck? Maybe that's my own narcissism, my own delusion of grandeur.
For most of our history, significant personality disorders were treated as problems and largely relegated to the fringes of society. But in our...
Exactly. Like, put in mental institutions where they can't harm anybody.
Emerging cluster B society, the narcissist, the borderline, the hysteric, and the antisocial psychological types have been elevated into positions of power and celebrated by our institutions.
This is everything I've been saying. It's everything I've been saying.
New status quo is an emerging leadership class that rules through emotional blackmail. Powerful institutions use the cover of various victim groups to impose their agenda on the rest of us. If we dissent, we're branded as hateful bigots. We're accused of lacking empathy. We're ritualistically banished. While these strategies are contemptible, they're also remarkably effective in controlling what we think, what we say, and how we act. And they've slowly transformed our institutions into what psychologist Andrei Lobachevsky calls pathocracy, or rule by psychological dysfunction. This has become our new social order. If you look around, you'll start seeing it everywhere. The cluster B traits have been formalized and entrenched in our human resource departments, government policies, cultural institutions, and civil rights law.
Jesus, did I write this? I mean, like, whoever helped him with this or what got this off my channel? Jesus.
This is a recruiting video from the CIA that overtly valorizes the cluster B traits of narcissistic identity obsession, self-righteousness.
Right. This is what I've been saying. What used to get you thrown in a mental institution is now being recruited for in our governments, in our schools, in in our elected officials, in law schools, in the DOJ and the legal system. Now it's sought after.
And need for affirmation.
I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder.
Of course you are.
In a cluster B society, psychological disorders become markers of distinction rather than problems to be solved. Politics, too, has been infected.
Here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here.
You know, if there was women didn't vote, none of this would be happening, right? Like, it's just the way it is. I'm sorry. I mean, go look. I mean, it's all over. It's all over the internet. Basically, if only men voted and only women voted. If only men voted, the entire country is red. The entire country. The only place I think they win is Vermont.
This is a state senator engaged in deranged moral theatrics, with all of the attention-seeking, black and white thinking, and excessive emotionality associated with Cluster B.
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning.
Oof, SSRI eyes. This is the Cluster B. This is the borderline. On SSRIs, just out, and she's sitting in. This is a Senate hearing. This is insane.
Is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence.
See, and this is what McCarthyism has done. And it's starting in 1954. It gave uneducated morons, mental midgets, the ability, okay, the moral authority to talk down to elected senators, to talk down to people in actual authority, to talk like this to their parents, to their families, to their teachers. I'm smarter than you are. You are not. You are not. Under the guise of being called a McCarthyite, now it's transphobe, homophobe, woman hater, misogynist, the patriarchy. This all goes back to McCarthyism, to the censure of Joe McCarthy. It gave these sociopaths the green light. It gave them the tool to beat people over the head with.
By not recognizing them.
And finally, we see Kiara Bridges, a law professor at UC Berkeley, who demonstrates the kind of antagonism.
A law professor. Are you serious?
Emotional manipulation, and accusatory tone that has become a staple of political discourse. The goal is not to arrive at answers, but to browbeat opponents and make them feel bad for denying left-wing orthodoxy. The modern university is the primary laboratory for the Cluster B pathologies. On campus, the pathocracy rules. The social critic Heather McDonald reveals the basic contours of this regime in an essay entitled The Great Feminization of the University. McDonald argues that the dramatic rise in the number of female college administrators who now dominate the campus culture has led to a growing obsession.
Heather McDonald, I believe, is another female who is against the 19th Amendment.
With safety, harm, and victimization, rather than prioritize academic achievement and substantive debate.
That's the matriarchy. It's all based on how you feel. Not even how you feel, how she feels. How she thinks the world should be, because she can rule it better than anybody. Even better than other women. They all believe this.
Administrators have elevated nebulous therapeutic concepts such as trauma, white fragility, and systemic injustice. As McDonald notes, when students claim to be felled by ideas that they disagree with, the feminized bureaucracy does not tell them to grow up and get a grip, it validates their self-pity. As a result, American college students have found themselves in the midst of an unprecedented mental health crisis. According to the University of Michigan's Healthy Mind Study, more than 60% of college students meet the criteria for at least one mental health problem. A nearly 50% increase since 2013. The more
all Cluster B personality disorder, all of it. It's what they've been taught. It's what they enjoy. It's what they choose to do because it gives them power.
we indulge Cluster B style pathologies, the more we replicate them in our institutions. But rather than reverse course, university administrators have only leaned further into this broken model. Students are told that they are always under attack, that their safety is always threatened. And rather than strengthen them for meeting these challenges, administrators fight to sanitize the campus environment and shut down any speech deemed harmful or offensive. This is the perfect recipe for enabling and encouraging Cluster B-style narcissism and hysteria.
This is kindergarten shit. This is how children act. And this is what this is. This is so they never have to grow up. See, this new generation, they don't want to grow up. Gen X couldn't wait to grow up because we were treated as adults as children. But at the same time, infantilized our entire lives. These guys, they have no intention of growing up. They want there to be coloring books and nap time for their entire life.
Scenes and sentiments like these have become ubiquitous, and they work.
I'm uncomfortable because this event is tearing at the fabric of this community that I care about.
As we saw recently at Stanford Law School, the Dean of Diversity and Inclusion, working in a codependent manner with hyperventilating students, disrupted the speech of a federal judge. The dean accused the judge of causing harm and making her uncomfortable. This is all it takes to justify the mob. It's Cluster B.
And the only thing that remember, what makes the narcissist, what makes the borderline, what makes the histrionic most uncomfortable is the truth. The truth about who they really are is holding the mirror up to their face is what causes the greatest offense to them. And their way out of that is always, you've hurt my feelings matter, you're a sexist, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're this, you're that, because my feelings. And well, what hurt your feelings? What is it that hurts their feelings the most? It's the truth. The truth of having to look in the mirror of who they actually are.
Powered pathocracy in action. The cluster B pathologies have a remarkable power of transmission, and like a pathogen leaking from a lab, they've broken containment and are spreading through the rest of society. The messaging of our major corporations is looking more and more like the celebration of disorder, whether it's attempting to normalize gender dysphoria,
jealousy. And what drives it, which always drives the borderline and the narcissist, is jealousy. Jealousy, and a lot of times, fucking straight out laziness. And entitlement. I'm entitled to eat whatever I want. I'm entitled to look however I want, and you have to accept it. I'm beautiful. This is healthy. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. How dare you? You transphobe. You woman hater. You fatphobe. Like, no matter what, they are going to be the victims. Why? Because they are jealous of the people who make sacrifices to look a certain way, to get to a certain place in life, that they feel like it should just be handed to them.
Or rewriting the standards of health and beauty. Social media has only accelerated these trends. Sites like TikTok have become a breeding ground for mental illness, especially in teenage girls, who mimic the cluster B behaviors they see online and have seen skyrocketing rates of anxiety and depression in the real world too. The sudden explosion of transgenderism follows the same line of development. Transgender individuals are 30 times more likely to suffer from the cluster B personality disorders compared to the general population. And more than 50% of mothers with gender dysphoric boys suffer from borderline personality disorder.
Of course, that's what I've been trying to... The transing of your children is driven by a borderline personality disordered mother. This is why I talk about this. Because if I was 5 years old now with my parents, my mother would have me on hormone blockers. She'd be trying to cut shit off of me 100%. 100%.
A remarkable transmission of psychopathology. Much of the recent left-wing violence has also taken on the cast of the cluster B disorders. The George Floyd riots were remarkable in part for their psychological tone. Wild emotional displays, narcissistic identity rituals, and victimology manifested in the streets. The antisocial personalities have learned how to wield left-wing ideology in order to justify their violence and terror.
Communism. Oh, no, he got it right here. Right here. Communism, anarchy, Molotov cocktail. Molotov coming from the Russian Revolution. There you go. It's driven by Marxist ideology, by communist ideology. And how is it able to get so pervasive? 1954, the censure of Senator Joe McCarthy.
As psychologists have long known, there is a long-established link between violent personalities and left-wing authoritarianism. The mugshots of Antifa foot soldiers drive home the point. These are not mentally well people. They are the hideous face of antisocial violence, the enforcement arm of the modern left, the political vanguard of our cluster B society. And they will...
Remember when Obama said back in 2008 he wanted a civilian force that was on par with our military force, and nobody knew what he was talking about? This is what he's talking about. This is what he meant.
Will not stop until they've transformed the world in their own image. Anonymous right-wing critics have taken to calling this strange new cluster B regime the Longhouse, a matriarchal form of society that privileges the values of care, concern, and feminine social strategies. In an essay for the magazine First Things, the pseudonymous writer Lomez explains that women now outnumber men in professional managerial roles and vastly outnumber men in human resource departments, which have outsized influence on professional and cultural norms.
The changing from calling personnel, because it used to be the personnel department where it was, did you follow the rules, hiring and firing, and that's it, to human resources, whatever the fuck that means. That's what caused so much of this.
The left, too, is now acknowledging the emergence of the Longhouse. In her presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton...
And the future is not female. I mean, the near future is, but if you want to get anything built, if you want to get any infrastructure built, if you want to get anything done, good luck. Still waiting for that all-female construction crew. I'm waiting for that all-female construction crew that's going to put in a sewer system. It's going to build a building. It's going to build anything. Oh, wait, that's right. We had one in Florida who built a bridge. And what happened to that bridge? In under 24 hours, it collapsed, killing 6 people in Florida.
Confidently declared that the future is female. And in an essay for The Atlantic, Hannah Rosen heralded this change with an essay titled, The End of Men.
The End of Men. You know, they keep talking about, women should boycott, they should just take the day off. Could you imagine what would happen if all men just said, we ain't doing shit? If the men pulled an Atlas Shrugged. It's like, okay, you don't need men. Fine. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call when somebody's breaking in? Who are you going to call when something burns? The all-female fire department? Who are you going to call when the electricity goes out? The all-female crew on the power team? Who are you going to call when trees go down in a storm? And you're going to call out the all-female tree crews? The end of men.
Both were correct. But while some are celebrating this shift, our female future is not an unalloyed good. Despite what we're told, biological sex differences are real, and an imbalance between the two has negative effects for everyone. Taken too far, overly feminized leadership produces exactly the kind of cluster B society we're living in today. One in which identity is rewarded over merit, in which victimhood is prioritized over competence, in which
Yes. Yes.
social behavior goes unchecked, in which moral narcissism is the currency of the realm. The cluster B society is upon us, and we must find a way out. We must find a way to restore balance, to restore order, to restore sanity, because if we don't, we are resigned to a world gone mad. If you want a picture of that future, imagine this person screaming in your face forever.
Well, it won't be forever, because eventually enough shit's going to break, and they have no means of fixing it whatsoever, and they're not going to want to live like that. Listen, some very hard decisions are going to have to be made. We got here We got here for a certain reason. You got to stop with this whole matriarchy page. The matriarchy is devastating. The 19th Amendment was one of the biggest disasters socially that has ever happened. I'm sorry. That's just a fact. Again, find me the female politician that has made anything better. Anything. What is the female-run business that runs that needs to be looked to as the model example of how to run a business, how to run a corporation? Every time it seems like you get the new female who's running something, a couple months later, boom, she's going to prison for fraud, for extortion, for something. It doesn't work because women, by and large, run their lives through emotion. And when they don't get their way, they want to run the world and run the corporation like they'd run their living room. Send you to your room on some trumped up charges because that's just how it's going to be. So, interesting little documentary. A lot of what I've been saying here. I mean, I'm glad it was done. I really am. Makes me wonder, though. A little frustrating on a personal level, but that's neither here nor there. It's very good. Speaks to most everything I've been talking about. Leans into the woman angle, to the communism angle. I mean, really, I would like to see somebody finally pick up on the censure of McCarthy being the fuse for all, lighting the fuse to all this that really sped this whole thing along. But I'm sure we'll get there. All right. So thank you to Clara for the contribution. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, and email links in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. Also, be sure to subscribe to both of my channels on Rumble. Follow me on Twitter and Telegram as well. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Societal Narcissism. Take care, everyone.